my whole life I've been optimistic. I'm an optimistic person. But right now I feel really, really pessimistic. And it's really quite simple. Young people that I know in my own family, in my workplace, and friends and family are all struggling to get their housing sorted out in London. When I first came here, it was very easy to afford to buy a home on an ordinary salary. You might not get the best part of London, but you could find a place to live. And if you couldn't really afford that, then you could probably get a council flat. There was actually an oversupply of council housing when I first came to London. Equally, if you were a nurse or a policeman, you would get something provided by your employer. So everybody was catered for. There was no problem, really, getting housed in London. London was the place to come, to have a great job, to have a great life, to put down roots, to have a family. This is not something I feel is available to young people today. A few who have a lot of money in the family, they can be sorted out. But most people, that really isn't feasible. A lot of flats start at £500,000. A lot of salaries people are earning with a degree or two is 25 grand. Doesn't work, does it? It's completely unsustainable. It's absolutely nutty. That's what makes me pessimistic, that the housing in London that's available for our young workers and our young people coming in, it just doesn't work. So they can't afford to buy. Maybe they could have got a council house in the past, but no, the council housing now goes to people in the very greatest need. The people who are very, very poor, often have mental health problems and often have 2 or 3 children. That's who it's reserved for, not ordinary working class families. And the housing that might have been available to the coppers and the nurses is all been sold off. And now go and find something in the wildest outskirts of London and have a 2-hour drive into work. And that is how it is. Now, does that make a sustainable city? No, it does not. Most people cannot afford to live here. I did some research in my own organisation. I have 1,000 employees. A lot of them are in that sort of wage bracket, 25 to 35k. They may be single, they may be in couples. Most of those people cannot afford to rent a self-contained home or buy something for themselves. Most of them are compromising in a major way that makes me very unhappy. Either they're living in a houseboat, or they're living with their mum and dad, aged 30, not able to bring any friends home, or they're in a shared house. This site, spareroom.com. Go and have a look at it. It'll shock you. You can rent a room in someone's kitchen. Yeah, I mean, that is lots of things like that. You can rent a room which has 4 double beds. I've never even seen one of these before. A bunk, double bed bunk. 8 people sharing one room. 4 couples sharing one room. These sort of things are available now in London, in this beautiful, valuable, artistic, creative world that everybody likes. Young people are living like this. They're having their meal on their lap in their bedroom at night because the living room and the dining room are let out as rooms to other couples. They can't have friends around. Imagine, come round to my flat. And what is your flat? It's a room with a single bed. Would you like to be entertained in my room with a single bed? It's not really very thrilling, nor is bringing a friend round to your parents' house when there are 2, 3 kids also in the house and you're sharing a bed with your sister. These are people in my organisation. I'm not making this up. So I have become pessimistic about London's ability to produce a livable environment for the younger generation. And the age of the people in this room, not everybody, but age of people in this room, a lot of us are settled, so we don't necessarily think this one out. And young people are just putting up with it because they are hopeful, perhaps, that maybe they'll do better in the future. We're having people apply for very much better jobs than they're really capable of because they're so desperate to make greater amounts of money to access a home of their own. Shared ownership now is getting very expensive, and our young staff are saying, I cannot afford to access shared ownership. It's selling to people who are earning around 50k a year. And at one time, the social housing and the shared ownership were sort of steps one to the next so that you could move seamlessly from social housing into shared ownership. Now there is a big gap. And in that big gap, most of our young workers are sitting, unable to meet their own housing need. So I'm a pessimist. But of course, optimism of the will, as Gramsci, that Italian Marxist, tells us, pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. What can we do about it? Well, there are quite a few things we can do. I think the housing zones is great. I think Superbia is great. I think we should probably turn the suburbs of London into areas which are alive, alert, with a nightlife, with some dense housing that young people can live in and afford. But it will need subsidy. It will need some help. It cannot be done economically. In order to make it subsidised, either we could be getting some public sector land in, which needs to be seriously thought about. The planning permissions and the public sector land, both of these could do something about reducing the cost of the product. We could look at something like modern nurses' homes, opportunities for people to have some kind of hostel type or HMO type accommodation while they start off in their jobs. But I feel these things will give us another 10 years perhaps when the outskirts are developed and come to life and can just about sustain people. After that, I think there's no hope for London. Unless we do something really fundamental in terms of producing homes for low-income Londoners, London is finished. And I say to my own young friends and my own kids, think about Manchester, think about Barcelona, think about Berlin. Don't think about, buying a shared tiny little place in the outskirts of Bromley, because you're going to be traveling for an hour and a half a day, sharing rooms with other people. At one point, you'll get to the stage where that tips over. And I feel without a much more serious political commitment to this problem and a bigger commitment of public resources to this problem, London will fail. We have one major city in this country, and it's a terrific one. You can't actually breathe out there, but it's still a great city. But unless we develop some other sites in London, regional centres, Northern Powerhouse or something in Scotland, we will fail as a country as well. We cannot keep piling more and more people in here and hoping that it will work unless we change our policies in a really fundamental way. Thank you.